Hey, it's Ollie, and in this video I want to answer the question of how can you make sure you don't forget a word that you're trying to learn in a foreign language. Now, this was a question I answered on the I Will Teach You a Language podcast some time ago actually, and it was interesting because the person who asked the question wanted to remember the word for Heathrow Airport, which is one of the main airports in London in the UK. And I think he had some friends who were flying in from China, and he'd learnt this word for Heathrow, and he wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to forget it. And so he asked, like, Ollie, how can I make sure I don't forget this word? So there's a few different levels to this question, I think. The first thing to say is, like, if it's a word that is really important for you, if it's really meaningful for you, if it's something that you have to remember for a particular thing, like, you know, for example, you need to tell friends which airport they're arriving at or whatever. If it's that meaningful for you, the chances are you're not going to forget it. The brain always has a habit of remembering those words which are most meaningful for you. So I would actually be quite surprised if you did forget that, if this person did forget that word for Heathrow, because, you know, they've obviously gone about intentionally learning it, so it should stay quite memorable. But really, you know, if you want to, you know, there's lots of different techniques for learning vocabulary, right? But what happens in language learning is because we need to learn so much of it, so much vocabulary, that inevitably some vocab ends up falling through the cracks, and there's not much you can do about that. You know, we're human, and our brain is not totally infallible. So if you want to really make sure you don't forget a word, you have to intentionally go out there and just make sure you're practicing it and recording it all the time. And I think, you know, there's a few different levels to this. You need to make sure that you're constantly revising that word, so you might want to keep a sort of flashcard in your pocket or something, or even set a reminder on your calendar to flash back up every 12 hours or something like that. Stick a post-it note on a door, those kind of things. If you want to guarantee you'll remember it, then there's a certain element of rote learning here that you're going to have to do in order to just convince yourself that you have remembered it. But the other thing is that, you know, we remember stuff that we use, and if you really want to remember this word, there's a word you really want to remember, the other thing I would be doing is trying to drop that word into conversation as much as possible, and it can be in a totally artificial way. You know, let's take this word for Heathrow, for example. You know, if you're having conversations in your target language, then I would just be making up excuses for dropping the word Heathrow into every single conversation as nothing more than an exercise, a kind of recall exercise. And then you'll find that with a combination of kind of rote memory, frequency, so seeing it as much as possible, sticking a post-it note up on the door, and actually trying to use the word itself, you'll find that sticks. Now there are different levels you can go to, and one of the things, especially works quite well with if you're learning single words in isolation, is to try to use mnemonics of some kind, and that's, you know, kind of word association. So, you know, think carefully about the sound of the word and see if you can link it to some kind of image. The image might be a word that maybe it sounds like another word in English. So maybe, like in the case of Heathrow, well, you've got two English words right there. You've got heath, which is like a bit like this actually, where I am now, a heath, and row, which is a row of seats. So maybe you can come up with some kind of imagery there that are going to help you remember it. Mnemonics are very, very powerful and will help you do that. But the truth is, if you need to remember one word, then no one single method is going to help. You need to use a complete barrage of techniques to try and get that word really printed and etched in your brain. So that's given you a few ideas, and I will see you in the next video.